In the citadel of glass and aurora, Queen Vera of the Lumion Spire took a human husband because the star charts said it would prevent a war. The Lumion were born of light, their bones lattices of prismatic thread, their hearts rhythm-bound to the city's great lattice that stitched every citizen into a shared hum. The Terran delegation sent Jonah Reed, a quiet envoy with weathered hands and a gaze that never flinched. He wore a plain suit, a modest silver cuff, and a smile that made Vera's nobles click their tongues. He looked so soft. The spire glittered around him like a sword he had no business holding. The vows were sung in spectrum and spoken in breath. Vera bled a ribbon of light into her crown. Jonah pressed his palm to a censer and promised, in a language that did not sing, to stand, to witness, to build. He did not stumble. He did not try to touch her after, not even when courtiers jostled and cameras flashed. He spoke little, walked the city's lower districts without escort, and listened with an attention that pressed warm and steady against Vera's guard. 3 weeks into the marriage, the null tide arrived. It came without sound, a shadow that ate the edges off light. It fell over the farming homes first, and the songs in the lattice went thin, then silent. Old General Skarn demanded they sever the outlying links, cut the dark places loose before infection spread. Majesty, he said, armor like a thunderhead, the spire must endure. The council murmured in relief at the cruelty of it. The spire is our people, Vera said, and felt the lattice wince at the lie of safety. She took her place upon the prism throne, crown warming until it was a second skull. The city's hum flooded her, thousands of pulses braided into one. The null tide pressed its cold to the glass. Vera braced and pushed, pouring power outward along old pathways, but the dark lapped closer, tasting, unmaking pattern wherever it found it. Jonah laid a hand on the throne rail, not touching her. "Let me help," he said quietly. "You cannot bind to the lattice," Skarn snapped. "Your kind is deaf to it." Jonah unfastened his silver cuff and clicked open a hidden hinge. Inside lay a wafer-thin disc, black as a pupil. "I trained as a resonant diver on Earth," he said, looking at Vera, not the room. "We pull people out of collapsed signal fields, out of mines where comms go dead. We learned to thread through nothing. The trick isn't more light. It's giving the void something it can't flatten." Vera felt the null bite into a coastal district, laughing markets snuffed in a blink, and her restraint burned away. "Do it." They brought him a chair beside the throne and a feed line. He didn't take the chair. He knelt, placed the disc on the crystal floor, and laid his palm over it. "You're pushing," he said to Vera, voice steady. "Let me pull with you, from underneath. Not into brightness. Into texture." He began to breathe in measured counts, a rhythm that found the crevices of the room. The disc warmed, the rail under Vera's hand thrummed in a new pattern, low and human. Jonah did not sing. He remembered. It moved through the lattice not as a broadcast, but as an ache, the scratch of a wool blanket in winter, the grit of wind-driven sand on teeth, the awkward glory of learning to ride a bicycle and falling and trying again while a father laughed and clapped, the smell of frying onions in a small kitchen where a sister danced. Details so specific the null could not flatten them into static. Vera felt the dark hesitate. "Now," Jonah said, and Vera shifted her power, not outward in a sheet, but in narrow threads, hooking each hesitation, stitching. Together they wove a new layer into the lattice, a mesh of micro-anchors that didn't depend on brightness. She split authority, shunting slivers of the spire's hum into ordinary citizens, a bridgekeeper in the south, a boy on a rooftop with a kite, an old woman who had lost 3 sons and learned how to keep living anyway. As their pulses steadied, the null flowed around them like water around stones. Skarn swore. "This is heresy," he spat, but his voice shook with awe. "Power diffused is power lost. Or multiplied," Jonah said softly. The null surged, angry. It struck at the palace itself, lights dimming to bruise purple. The lattice screamed in Vera's bones. She tasted iron, saw black frost creep across the floor. Jonah's hand trembled. Blood dripped from his nose, bright as berries on snow. "Stop," Vera said, reaching for him. "Enough." "Almost there," he whispered, and something like a smile ghosted his mouth. He was not fearless. Fear shivered in him, glittering and honest, but he held it like a tool, not a master. One more weave. He drove the rhythm lower, a heartbeat turned drum. Vera reached with him and found the old cadences taught to queens before cities sang, when monarchs took pain into their ribs and transmuted it by stubborn will. She threaded Jonah's human roughness through the Lumian harmonic until the two became a braid. The null pushed and hit a net made of 1,000 tiny, specific lives. It slid, found no purchase, and, at last, thinned. The homes brightened. The markets breathed. The palace lights came back, stuttering, then sure. The council cheered, messy and unpracticed. Skarn fell to one knee. Vera felt none of it. She slid from the throne to the floor and caught Jonah as he swayed. He was heavy, very human, and burning up. "You hid this," she said, cradling him in a way that would shake the front pages by morning. "I didn't want to be used up," he murmured, eyes half open. "Anchors on earth, we burn fast. I wanted to be your husband, not a tool." Vera, who had been raised to use and be used by the crown without complaint, felt that sentence strike like a bell. "You are both," she said, surprising herself with the tenderness of it. "And you chose when. That is strength." He blinked, and for the first time since their wedding his mouth shaped a grin that belonged to no diplomat. "Then let's choose well." The aftermath was work, not legend. Vera convened the citizens who had steadied the web and named them cord-bearers. The lattice was rewritten to allow many hands. Skarn resigned his post and became the first to teach nobles how to kneel to fishermen with anchors in their chests. The Terrans sent more divers, but it was Jonah who refused the parade and went instead to the darkest of the homes to sit with the children who had learned silence too young. On a balcony of light above a city that had almost gone dark, Vera stood with Jonah as dawn made the spire glow like a peeled pearl. "I thought strength meant holding everything alone until it broke or I did," she said. Jonah turned his hand so their fingers meshed. "I thought strength meant not needing anyone." He nodded toward the city, toward the waking hum that included them both. "Turns out we were both wrong in the best way." Vera, queen, anchor, wife, let herself lean, just a fraction. The lattice thrummed approval, a chord both human and Lumian. When the next night came, there would be darkness at the edges. There always was. But the city had learned to knit itself from inside, and she would never again mistake softness for weakness. She looked at the man she had married to avert a war and found in him the calm at the heart of chaos. She was, she admitted, shocked. And grateful. And ready. "Come," she said, leading him back into the palace that sang. "There is so much to carry." "We'll carry it," he answered, and they did.